Do you know what the sign of a foreign accent is? It's bravery.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Godlewski, an American girl who called the cornfields of Illinois home until over 10 years ago when I started navigating the chaos of life overseas. If you've ever felt that itch for something more, that whisper telling you to break free from the ordinary, you're in the right place. This podcast is your backstage pass to the wild ride of moving abroad. I'm here to pull back the curtain on the real journey, sharing stories that are funny, dramatic, and sometimes downright unbelievable. We'll explore the gritty details, from battling culture shock and navigating tricky visa processes to celebrating those small victories that make it all worth it. So, whether you're daydreaming about a new life abroad or already in the thick of it, grab your passport and let's explore what it really means to live life beyond borders. Welcome to A Broadly Speaking.
Let's give this a shot. See how this goes. Welcome to the Broadly Speaking podcast. My name is Miss Doe. I'm so glad you're here. If this is your first time listening, congratulations. Welcome to the adventure. If you've been here before, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you back. Today, I am recording live in the car. So I apologize for any car noises. I'm on the way to pick up my daughter, and I just had to download and I had to upload it for you. So here you go. I do apologize if there's random noise or whatever, or the background noise is a little funny, but I feel like this is like life. This is what real life is. And right now, this is what we get. So here we go. Over the last few days, I have been really bothered because I've seen a lot of people mention online in the online space related to expats, related to immigrants, related to moving abroad. It's been a lot about language and whether or not you need to know the language or that you should choose the country based on the language that you speak. So, if it's not obvious, I'm American. And when we moved originally to Switzerland, I did not speak any of the four languages that are here fluently. So there's four official languages in Switzerland. None of them are English. We have German, French, Italian, and a what I would call a mountain language that's called Romansh, of which I don't speak any. I took 4 years of Spanish in high school because I thought Spanish would be more useful. I Full disclosure, I had German as a child because we lived in Germany when I was small. So from age 4 to 9, I lived in Germany. But reality is, I couldn't say much in German. And I think the only thing that I was actually able to do is say my name, which is the same, and count to 100. And maybe if I remember the alphabet, we would have a good day, right? So when we moved more than 10 years ago, the first time, it was really scary. And I freely admit I was terrified because I was like, what if I have to go to the doctor? What if an emergency happens? What if something happens at our apartment? Like I can't speak German, so what should we do? So the reality is that you do not need to be able to speak the language when you move. If you can, excellent. If you can't, that's okay too. You'll be able to learn it when you get there. And I have a few tips for how that'll happen. And I think that that's really a key sticking point for a lot of people. So I want to share with you a few thoughts on this. So I hope this is something that will help you too. What I want to say specifically is learning a language from Rosetta Stone, from Babbel, from I don't know, wherever the language learning apps that we have these days, that's amazing and it's great. But your 100-day Duolingo streak is really not going to help you when you're standing in front of a restaurant and someone is speaking really fast to you or in dialect to you and like you're completely lost. So don't feel like it's necessary to be 100% fluent or even let's say 5% fluent when you move. There are some things that you can do specifically that will help you when you move to get language acquisition faster. Number 1, consider that you can use Google Translate. When we moved the first time, Google Translate wasn't really a thing. It was 2013. We like, okay, Google will Translate probably existed, but not in its form that it is today. You can't talk into it and have it translate for you. Like that certainly didn't exist back then. And we were not 100% confident in the language. Neither my husband nor I spoke it fluently. So, like, we really went to the doctor the first time without having the ability to speak any German at all. And fast forward to today, 10 years later, 11 years later almost, I am fluent in German. I have achieved fluency over time. I learned the language since I've been here. I'm able to go to the doctor in German if I want to. I'm able to converse comfortably at the shops in German. I'm able to like buy and order things and live life as I need to in German when English isn't available. I'll be honest, at a doctor's office, I still default to English because it's simpler, it's straightforward. I can say medical terms in English a lot easier than I can in German. So I get it, right? There are certain times when I still default to English. My husband, also been here for 10 years, does not comfortably speak German in any time, honestly. Um, if he had to, if it were an emergency situation, he could probably get by with some broken German. But the truth is he never really dedicated himself to learning. He had other things that he was working on instead related to his work, and he didn't really feel like he had a lot of time to dedicate. Okay. He didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to learning the language. So he decided to focus on some other things. That being said, there are a few tips on how to make sure that you can integrate quickly with the language. Number one, and this is my tip number one for the day. Um, the best thing that we did was to get language lessons included in our reload package. So we moved for work. We had a job offer and a job opportunity. And as part of that, you get a relocation package that says, here's a few things that you'll come along. And one of those things that we were really glad that we had was language learning lessons. I think we had 1 or 2 years, I don't quite remember, but we were able to achieve at least very basic level German with those language learning lessons. Now, if you're moving without a relocation package or you cannot negotiate your reload package, it's like, this is it, and this is what you get, then consider when you arrive to take local language lessons and take them in your country that you're landing in. Don't only try Duolingo or don't only try Babbel or Rosetta Stone or whatever other language learning lessons there are these days. Make sure that you're learning locally because dialect is really important. For me in Switzerland, like I said, there are theoretically, there's four languages, but the German that's spoken in Basel is very different than the Lucerne German, which is very different than the Zurich German, right? So, and Bern is a whole nother type of German. So, in different regions, just like in the US, while we can understand each other in English across the US, the accents are different, and how you would pronounce words or the best way to get your point across is different. I know that's also the case, for example, in the UK, one person speaking in Northern Ireland speaking to somebody from Scotland, completely different, even though it's the same language. And if we take it from a US perspective to UK perspective, we have a whole nother level, or Australia, right? So while it's the same base language, it's not necessarily spoken the same way or used the same words. So I really value having learned the language locally so that I can apply the local learning to how I speak, right? So that's a really great effort is take language lessons when you arrive, join a group course or a one-on-one course, whatever works for you, whatever works for your budget, but consider that it could be really valuable. And once you're immersed in it and using it every day and you see it every day, you go to the grocery store, it's in German, you go to websites, it's in the language, you go to, whatever church and it's in that local language. There's a lot of ways to feel immersed in it, and that will help your language acquisition be so much faster. Number two, if you're working, I work in a global company. I work in English. My company's language is English at the office. Everyone is expected to be able to communicate with each other in English in the global position that I'm in. So it's easy for me, right? English is being my first language, it's super easy. But that makes learning the language harder, like the local language harder, because everybody speaks English around me at work. So one of the things that I did in my first role, um, that was local here in Switzerland, is I actually would have Friday, we would do foreign Fridays. And so language Fridays were where we would have lunch in the local language every Friday. Now, this was before COVID, so we were all required to be in the office. There was no hybrid working back then. But we were great because every Friday, all of the native German speakers, we would have lunch together in German. And they, there were a bunch of us that were foreign speaking, whether we were French speaking, Italian, English. I think there was even a guy from the Ukraine at the time. So all of us had different native languages, but we were able to communicate all together in German. And we did that because that really helped with language acquisition as well in conversational German. Now, we weren't having very technical discussions in the office. We were still communicating mainly in English with one another because that was easier. Although two German speakers may communicate with each other in German, but anyone non-German speaking was communicated to in English, which was great. But using lunchtime, it was a safe environment where we could communicate. What are you doing this weekend? Where are you going? What's going on with whatever, right? So basic communication, basic level of living language was great for us. And we had people who would help. We made a rule that like it was okay to make mistakes and it was no one would be offended if they were corrected and no one would be offended if they weren't corrected, right? Like if I can't get my articles correct in German, there's three, in English, there's the, but in German, there happens to be three different ones. And if I screwed up the masculine, feminine, and neutral, then it is what it is, right? And no one really cared. And that really, really helped again with just feeling a community and being able to have a conversation with my neighbor who shouldn't have to speak to me in English, right? She does. She's amazing. I love my new neighbor. But it's great that we have the opportunity to communicate in German. The other thing from a school perspective, if you have kids in school, I asked her German teachers. My daughter goes to a bilingual school, but I've asked her German teachers to communicate with me in German. That's another way that, again, it reinforces me speaking the language, me using the German regularly, me practicing German regularly, instead of me just using English all the time. Now, one other way that worked really, really well, and I threw myself in the deep end of the pool on this one, and I don't necessarily think this was the easiest way to learn, but it definitely got me to practice. Was while we were living in Vienna, I was a manager at a company, and the people that were reporting to me weren't all able to speak freely in English. A couple of people, English was either their third language or not really a language that they were comfortable speaking. And in the long run, I made a deal with one of the members of the team that was not comfortable speaking English. And I said, cool, our team meetings have to be in English because there were people that didn't speak German, and that was part of the global part of the team. But with him specifically, I said, I will speak with you in German so long as you accept that I'm going to make mistakes. There will be times where I say the wrong word or I don't know how to say pillow, for example. And I say something like the thing you lay your head on at night that's soft that you sleep on, right? So you might use 50 words to describe something that maybe has one single word in German or one compound word in German, but I may not know it. So you're going to have to forgive me if I have to sort of make up words or explain things differently. But he agreed. And so I was able to speak with him in German, and he would help me acquire more words or learn new words that I could use. And I was able to feel confident and comfortable enough to be like, look, I'm going to make a mistake. If you accept that, then we'll communicate in German. If you don't accept that, then you're going to have to make mistakes and we're going to communicate in English. And so that was the way that it went. We ended up communicating in German, and how to acquire language very, very quickly is to use it every day, right? If you're immersed in it, if you're using it regularly, if you're actually communicating in it, it makes it so much better to actually learn the language versus taking an app and trying to apply it with other people who don't speak the language. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie. Like 10 years in, or almost 11 years in, I'm fully able to communicate in both languages. I don't really struggle in German. Occasionally, like accents will throw me off, or certain ways of speaking are still difficult for me. Specifically in the region we live in, Switzerland, there's a very heavy local accent, local dialect that I still sometimes struggle through. But overall, I'm able to communicate freely in German, which is really great. I recently went to the doctor for my daughter completely in German. I think I Google translated one word, which was, well, I guess technically it was two words. It's granola bar because I didn't know how to say that. But otherwise, we really were able to fully communicate in German, and we both got our points across. There wasn't lost in translation. And then if I didn't understand something, I was able to ask her to rephrase it to help me understand it. In addition to that, and what I will say when it comes to like doctors and many of the most critical areas where people are concerned by not being able to speak the language, honestly, every doctor I've been to, every dentist I've been to, everything, we've been able to find at least one person who can communicate in German, or I'm sorry, in English with us. If you don't know, if you haven't been around me for a while, you may not know that I am a cancer survivor. I hate that word. I use the word warrior, but most people use survivor. I had triple negative breast cancer at age 30 in 2011, shortly before we moved to Switzerland. I was going to the doctor every 6 months when we moved because I needed to be checked and live through that process, right? So when we moved, I was so worried that I would not be able to find a doctor who I could communicate with in English, because there was no way. I didn't even know at the time how to say cancer in German. Like I had nothing. And I'm like, how in the world am I going to have a conversation and tell them what I've been through and talk about my medical history and talk about the allergies, all that kind of stuff, right? Those are all fears and they're legitimate fears. And I had the same ones, but I was able to communicate with every doctor that I've had so far. I've had no challenges being able to communicate with them in English and be able to get my point across, and then be able to communicate with me comfortably and get their point across with no issue. Don't worry, is my point, right? There, you will find a way. And even if there are times where I will not lie, it's hand signals and like pictures to try and make sure that things make sense. And that's okay too. The first few weeks of going to the grocery store and not being able to communicate when they asked me, are you paying with cash or card? I learned that quickly. And you learn and pick up phrases and words so fast when you're immersed in it versus trying to learn far away, right? And in a distance. And so many people will tell me, well, I'm struggling and I want to learn the language before I go. And so I'm taking Rosetta Stone and it just isn't working for me. Or I'm using Babbel and I just can't remember. And I completely understand, because you're not using the language. It's impossible to actually internalize it and remember it until you start using it. There's an old statement. I forget who made it. I believe it was a professor somewhere in Yale who said, do you know what the sign of a foreign accent is? It's bravery. And I believe that to be true in so many ways. The fact that I try to speak German, and sometimes I get messed up and things get crazy and I ask to switch to English. But the fact that I try to speak German regularly and have conversations in German has completely changed, I think, my experience and cultural experience living here. I've been able to really be part of the culture and make friends that are local because I can speak the language. And I learned it while here. And I learned it by being brave, by making mistakes, by looking completely foolish when I used completely the wrong word for something. And that's okay. And people forgive you for trying, right? People forgive you for just making the mistake. The two words that I would recommend that you know before you move are thank you and please. Those are the two that I try and learn in every single country that I've ever visited, whatever the local language is. I always try to know how to say please and thank you, just because people are super kind, and the amount of of effort that you show just by learning how to say please and thank you is huge. People respect it and admire it and just really feel great when you actually use their language. So definitely, if you learn nothing else, try and learn those two. But everything else will come with time. And don't beat yourself up for it. Don't let something like that stop you from living your dream life abroad. Like, take that as a opportunity to be courageous, to be brave, to challenge yourself, and realize that it will be so much easier to actually learn the language and retain the language when you move and when you can use it every day versus just waiting for Babel to have you to ask you, the dog sits in the beer. Like, whoever says that in real life. So definitely make the choice to choose you and choose your bravery and choose, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. Trust me, that's not the most uncomfortable thing that's going to happen when you move abroad. So, like, just think about that. And if that is something that's completely never going to happen, then that's a choice that you're making. But don't let that fear be the choice that holds you back. That's it. That's what I have to say today. Welcome to my drive to my daughter's school. I'm just arriving, so perfect timing. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, please like and review the episode below. A 5-star rating would be awesome because it really does help the podcast grow. If you want to get more information about moving abroad, about living abroad, follow me on Instagram at I am Mistel. Otherwise, I will catch you on the next episode of Broadly Speaking.